Knucklebones is an indie horror movie released in 2016. It was directed by Mitch Wilson and starring Julin, with Tom Zimrod as our demonic killer. The basic plot of this movie is a young girl who gets dumped by her boyfriend attempts to commit suicide. So to cheer her up, her friends, bear with me now, take her to an abandoned clothing factory to party, where they stumble upon a box full of Nazi relics, one of which is a satanic dice game that summons a killer demon. So pretty standard stuff. We've heard it a million times, am I right? There's a lot to like about this movie, but the first thing I want to focus on here and kind of get out of the way are the negatives. Because there are big glaring negatives, and they're mostly on the technical side and sadly front-loaded, which I can't help but wonder if deters people and has held this movie back. The biggest problem this movie has is the sound design. The audio seems all ADR, and quite a bit of it doesn't match up. The sound levels are a little all over the place, and most of the sound effects are really generic and just don't blend into the movie very well. That's a big peeve of mine when it comes to indie movies, and this one is kind of offensive. It's the biggest problem I had with this movie, and will probably turn a lot of people off right out of the gate. Another problem is that the first 30 minutes of this movie is a little slow, and doesn't really show you a reason to keep watching. I know it was necessary to set up the characters and backstory, and all of that did pay off in the end, but it doesn't really match the fun, weird tone of the rest of the movie, which gives you the wrong idea at first. And I can't help but think that, combined with the questionable audio, will stop a lot of people from giving this movie the chance it deserves. Because if you make it past that 30-minute mark, I think this movie is fucking delightful. It has bad acting, but in that good way. It has a cool antagonist, the kind you don't get often these days, and a pretty batshit crazy, off-the-wall premise, all wrapped in the familiar by-the-numbers slasher tropes you love.
Okay, so who wants to go down first?
That's what she said.
The killer himself is the central focus of the movie, and he's pretty damn cool. He's just a big old mummy looking dude with a pentagram on his forehead and a tattered duster who talks a lot of shit and kills a lot of teenagers. The way he's summoned is brutal and really unexpected, catching you off guard. He's obviously heavily influenced by Freddy Krueger, and I guess you could either go with homage or knockoff in that regard, but I lean towards homage, honestly. I liked seeing this kind of killer again because it doesn't happen anymore, and it was a breath of fresh air. He wasn't just talking for no other reason than to be a talking killer. His one-liners all either punctuated his actions or called back to something from earlier in the movie, and they genuinely added to it, and the rest of his dialogue centered around the plot, which was mainly the liking he seems to have taken to Julin's character, and I liked it a lot. The kills in here are another big positive in the movie. They're all pretty creative and brutal, and from what I understand, they're done by guys who create effects for a haunted house attraction, and they did a damn good job. It's all 100% practical, and would hold its own with a lot of classics people love just for the gore, like Intruder or Terrifier, and hits that same kind of mark. Like, there's no heavy plot or anything to get in the way of the killer's badassery and the fun, gruesome effects. If you just come for the cool visuals and entertainment value of a slasher movie, you'll probably love it as much as I did. The acting, like I mentioned before, it's bad, but in a very good way. One character in particular, this guy Travis, played by Justin Arnold, has the most ridiculous dialogue, and he pulls his character off perfectly.
3 girls, 2 guys, Adam. 3 girls, 2 guys. I'm liking these odds.
That and the plot, which is kind of absurd, and moves forward in absurd ways, but seemingly on purpose. This movie centers around 5 main characters, and the way they bring in more fodder halfway through the movie is so circumstantial, and the way those fodder characters act is just so silly, you can't help but just laugh and accept it because it feels like the movie's in on the joke. It all kind of comes together to be really fun and entertaining. I'm gonna give this movie a 5.5 out of 10, but I actually highly recommend it to anyone who likes movies like Terrifier, Intruder, The Prowler, even Night of the Demons. All those cult classic movies with a big focus on practical effects, matched with humorously absurd stories. Again, unfortunately, I think the audio problems, which for me can totally destroy a watching experience, really hurt this movie, and that combined with the slow, off-tone start might deter a lot of people from even getting to the meat of it and keep it from quite reaching the same high honor as those movies. It sucks too, because you can see the good stuff all over. The lighting, the camera work, the pacing are all there and on point for a solid indie horror movie. But that audio, man, it just hurts it so much, and it had to reflect in my score. But even past that, I saw a lot of potential and what the director was going for. It feels like he's an actual fan. I think he gets it. He has a vision of a cool concept and the talent to pull it off in the writing and directing department. And in my opinion, I can't help but feel like all of these front-loaded flaws seem like things that were created in post-production and might again be stopping people at the door when they go to check this movie out, which is probably the worst thing that can happen. In my research, I did see that the director seems pretty passionate about his movie. Just last year, 4 years after its release, he put together an unrated director's cut Blu-ray. I'll leave a link in the description if you're interested. And he added an extra scene after the credits that I assume might imply he's considering a sequel. If that happens, I'll 100% be watching it. I think if he can hit the same mark on production quality and just make sure all the little technical things are on point, it might be something great. And again, not a sponsor. This is sincerely my honest, unsolicited opinion. If you see this movie and have the same notion toward it, check out the link. Consider buying the Blu-ray. Tell your friends to check the movie out. As of recording this, it's free on Prime. All of that might help us get that sequel and get this guy another chance to make something cool that a lot of cult indie horror fans might enjoy.